of the department and agencies, panelists, training providers, employers, Dato, Datin, senior leadership team from HRD Corp, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Shukr, Alhamdulillah, we are able to gather here today at HRD Corp internal panel discussion titled Reset and Redefine in conjunction with the HRD Corp Open Day Sabah 2022. Over the next 2 days, we will be organizing a series of activities designed to provide updates on our latest initiatives and services, offering to our registered trainers and training providers, our registered employers and their workforce, as well as to the Malaysian general in public. Today's forum, featuring industry leaders and experts, will discuss key issues and trends surrounding the future of work and how it impacts employees, organizations, and industries. This is a very timely topic, not just for HRD Corp, but also the nation as we start looking at new and innovative ways to empower Malaysian talent and workforce in order to accelerate our economic recovery plan. To understand what's going on, more importantly, what we can do about it, we must consider multiple covering trends and how they are already changing all aspects of way we live, work, play, and most importantly, the way we learn. In fact, thanks to technologies, schools and higher learning institutions that have been able to mitigate the impact of lockdowns in 2020 and 2021 through online remote learning and virtual classrooms. Moreover, in the last year, students and teachers are realizing that digital devices, apps, and tools can increase engagement, encourage collaboration, spark innovation, and enhance the overall learning experience for students. Beyond traditional academia, learning technology has also improved and empowered everyone to learn from any time, anywhere, on any device, paving the way for ongoing and continuous personal and professional development. This has also given rise to the adoption of massive open online courses, which enable anyone to upskill and embrace non-traditional career pathways along the way. At HRD Corp, we realize the importance of empowering Malaysian workforce and talent to embrace learning technologies for growth. Therefore, we introduced our very own online learning platform, eLatte, which provides Malaysians with the free access to over 1,300 personal development courses from around the world. I'm pleased to observe that in less than a year since its launch, over 220,000 Malaysians are now registered on eLatte, and we have over 530,000 enrollments have taken place in the last 1 year. Beyond that, we also understand that the convergence of training and technology has opened up new pathways to professional qualifications and credentials. Therefore, in April, we launched the HRD Corp micro-credential initiatives in collaboration with Malaysian Qualification Agency and the Ministry of Higher Education. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the third round of Open Day which HRD Corp is organizing in the last 1 year or so, last 6 months or so. And I used to work for education institution back in my early days, and that's where I get to know most of the time the word Open Days. To me, the word Open Day is all about giving information, solving people problem, helping each other, understanding how we could do things better. And I'm sure that the Open Day of HRD Corp is not something different from those Open Days which universities or colleges used to organize. When you go to colleges, university, they help you with their courses, their programs, how they could facilitate. It's exactly the way how HRD Corp want to do as well. This is all about, it's your day. And you are gathered here today, and I want to ensure that we solve your problem, we understand your issues, we work together for a better training and development initiatives in Sabah. Yesterday, I had a privilege to meet close to 50 over 50 over training providers, and I had a very healthy discussion. When I understand a lot about what are the challenges in Sabah, how HRD Corp can come in to support and assist all your expectations. I have some data statistics which I want to share with the audience here today. We have close to 110 registered training providers in Sabah. 110 training providers, where 45 of them are registered with HRD Corp. That means almost 50% of the training providers have not registered with HRD Corp. In overall Malaysia, we have close to 5,600 training providers registered with HRD Corp. And trainers, we have close to 40 trainers registered in Sabah. And accredited trainers, we have 9 registered with HRD Corp. The most important point, it's not about the training provider, it's not about the trainers, it's about the levy collection from Sabah. HRD Corp, we collect close to 160 million levy from Sabah on an annual basis. And with the expansion of the Act, which happened last year in 2021, March, now the levy collection has continued to increase in the upcoming years. What does it mean to the training providers? What does it mean to the trainers and the coaches? I mean, the market share is getting bigger. The economies of scale is going to increase. So there's a larger pool of money is available on the training and development space. So ladies and gentlemen, the training providers, the coaches or the trainers in Sabah have to continue to upgrade yourself to meet up to the expectation of the employers. You know, because the money belongs to the employers. The employers have the ultimate choice to decide who they could choose to continue to run their programs. As I mentioned yesterday, this is a borderless world. Marketing has become very convenient these days. Sitting in Sabah, you're able to get access to training providers and content in overseas. Likewise, the overseas training providers have access to your local employers. So there can be a lot of, marketings or development that could happen across the world. So we cannot sit down and say that it is becoming challenging for local people to compete with those people. The only way for us to continue to stay in the business is by upgrading ourselves and reskilling ourselves. Reskilling is just not only for the employees or the trainees. It should be the continuous mantra for the training providers, trainers, coaches, that you continue to keep in trend with the technology, change of learning methodologies, so at least you're able to serve your industry and your market in Sabah. When we have meetings in HRD Corp, we used to analyze a lot of data. Thanks to COVID, one way or another. If not for COVID, the online learning platforms, online technology in the learning would not have been come to the level of how it has been today. People has been very reluctant. There's a lot of resistance for people to accept online technologies, or online learning platform. But today, almost 70% or almost more than 60% of our training programs approved on the online programs. Dulu, we have no programs, online programs. Everybody want to go for face-to-face. People think that online program is very tedious, you can't do it. But today, 50% of our claim disbursement happen on online training program. That shows, actually, we are not reluctant to technology. We just need a force to push us to adapt any kind of technologies. So ladies and gentlemen, we also understand there are good training providers, there are good trainers who are able to deliver programs face-to-face, are not able to withstand COVID and withstand growing technologies. You're a good trainer on the face-to-face, but you're not able to deliver the same kind of quality training on the online space. So I think this is where I say the migration or the transformation of your skills from traditional to online have to be continuous. Today we are talking about online training. maybe in few months, in a years to come, we are talking about artificial intelligence, virtual reality. There's a lot of technology that needs to be emulated in the learning platform. So I think if we are not ready to accept those changes, we are going to be left behind. Change will never wait for us. Change will continue to change, and we must be ready to accept the change. There's a lot of resistance when we try to bring in new technology, when we try to bring in new methodologies, new content, new curriculums. Every time there's a lot of resistance. But at the end, people who are ready for the change continue to win and stay in the industry. So ladies and gentlemen, today is one of the important days for HRD Corp in Sabah. Sabah is one of the important market for HRD Corp. With the expansion of the Act, we target close to 400 million of levy collection in Sabah in 2 years from now. In other words, I shared this data to the training providers yesterday. This is a general run rate, the data that we share in HRD Corp. When we collect 100 million, for example, 100 million levy in a year, we pay back 65 to 70% of the levy to the training market, training providers, or coaches, or trainers to execute the program. That means when we collect 100 million, 70 million we put back into the industry, put back into the market. Think of 400 million when we collect in 2 years from now. We easily will put back 270 million or 250 million back into the industry. That's a lot of money. And you can't be able to do it if you don't have a quality, if you don't have a right content, a right partnership, right affiliation. You can't do it. So I think I want the training providers, the coaches and the trainers in KK to put serious efforts and thoughts to establish yourself strong. Then you're able to do a lot of opportunity, a lot of business with HRD Corp along with the employers. So I think the industry is shaping up very well. We at HRD Corp want to make sure that the industry continue to flourish. The training providers, the employees are one of the important stakeholders for HRD Corp. We continue to reach our success through our stakeholders. So it is our utmost important to make sure that stakeholders are given right guidance, right advice, right engagement. So when you have less problem, we have better success. So what I'm trying to say that it's not you work for me, I work for you. Let's work together to make this industry a better industry, better decent industry, the industry that has pride, the industry that could make the changes of people's life. There are people out there who believe that when they go and meet some of the training providers, they get the right skills, right qualification, and they're able to get a better job over the period of time. So there's a lot of dreams out there from the people. We should make sure that we help them to realize their dream. With that, and I want to say thank you so much for all those who are present here this morning. This is your day. This is the third series of the Open Day. Inshallah, we will continue to do more engagement in Sabah. After this, we are moving to Kuantan, then we are moving to Kuching. That we believe that engagement is the only way to make our product successful. And recently, HRD Corp has made a very significant decision, very important decision that we decentralize our operations in the process. Last time, everything had to go back to KL for all the decisions. But today, the board of HRD Corp, the senior leadership of HRD Corp have decided with the growing expectation in the industry, with a bigger collection of levy, we want to make sure that we address Sabah-based customers, Sabah-based clients in Sabah itself. So we set up a more stronger and a larger team to make sure that we are able to help you out. So most of the decisions, almost 85% of decisions are made in Sabah itself. Only the key decision goes back to KL. So that will help you have a better engagement with the Sabah team. With this, I would like to say thank you so much. And this series of conference today, which has been done, is something which is important for Sabah. I want the training providers to take part, the TPs to take part. And we have a very highly qualified panelists who are participating here today. And I want to take this opportunity to thank them. We have a speaker, Mr. Muniswaran Ramasamy, Mr. David Powell, Mr. Eric Sito, Ms. Lorna Timber, all the speakers who have taken their time to be here this morning, to be part of the panelists, and we have a great moderator. In the afternoon session, we have Professor Fu from the founding president of SME Association of Sabah. Then we have Mr. Timothy Teo. We have Professor Dr. Haji Morni, and we have Ms. Viwanti Sajuni, who are being part of the panelists for this afternoon session. Once again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And let's keep this session a very informal engagement session rather than monotonous, we just continue to talk, but we don't have any engagement. Thank you so much once again. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Shahul. If you could please remain on stage for the next agenda while we invite Yang Berbahagia Datuk Sri Jamil bin Saleh, the chairman of the board, HRD Corp, to join Dr. Shahul on stage for the token of appreciation to all the panelists today. Please welcome Datuk Sri Jamil Saleh, our chairman of HRD Corp, on stage with Datuk Shahul. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome the panelists for Redefine, the first session for today. The moderator, please welcome Mr. Muniswaran Ramasamy. Next, panelist number 1, David Powell. Please welcome Mr. David Powell on stage. And panelist number 2, Mr. Eric Sito. And panelist number 3, would like to welcome Ms. Lorna Timber. These are all the panelists for today for the first session of Redefine. Next, we'd like to welcome panelists for Reset, the afternoon session. Please welcome the moderator, Professor Fu Ngi Ki. Let's welcome the panelist number 1, Mr. Timothy Teo for Reset. Panelist number 2, Professor Dr. Morni Kambri. And last but not least, panelist number 3, Miss Vivianti Sarjuni. Please give a big warm applause for all the panelists today with the moderators. We will now proceed with the photography session on stage together with the panelists as well as Dr. Shahul and together with our chairman, Dr. Jamil Saleh on stage. We shall expect a very interesting discussion today with all these experts with us. With that, thank you so much to Dr. Shahul and also Dr. Sri Jamil for the token of appreciation, and thank you to all the panelists. You may now return to your seats. Thank you very much. Looking forward for the session. Ladies and gentlemen, HRD Corp has been at the forefront of Malaysia's human capital development efforts for the last 3 decades. One of the key reasons for HRD Corp's success is its ability to not just understand, but stay ahead of the latest trends and developments that affect employers, workforce, and the broader industry. This has enabled the organization to evolve and transform in order to meet the needs of its stakeholders and the wider Malaysian public. The HRD Corp Open Days series is part of its efforts to head to the ground, listen, and interact with all of its stakeholders across Malaysia. Beyond that, we have also put together 2 flagship events, today's industry panel discussion and tomorrow's National Forum series. Today's industry panel discussion brings together industry captains, leading members of academia, and subject matter experts to share their groundbreaking insights on talent developments and expectations, as well as how to reshape organizations to meet the demands of their rapidly changing environments. Titled Reset and Redefine, today's full-day event aims to inspire Malaysia employers and training providers to become disruptors and change makers who are able to embrace tech-driven human capital development solutions that can deliver real value to their organization and industry. This morning, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting with Redefine, and if you have any questions to our panelists, you may scan the QR code displayed on the screen. Following this, you will be taken to the Slido page where you can type and submit your questions. You may submit all your questions throughout the session, and our moderator will read out selected questions for our panelists to answer at the end of the session. So you may actually scan the code throughout this event, and your questions will be answered at the end of every session today. Well, we'll give a bit of a few minutes for them to set up the stage, and they're almost done. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite soon our moderators for today for the first session, which is called Redefine. Let's welcome, if we are ready. Okay. The moderator for today's session, Mr. Muneswaran Ramasamy, founder of TNT Business Solutions, to come on stage and take your seat. Our panelist, Mr. David Powell, Managing Director, Asia Ability Trading and Consulting. Mr. Eric Sito, Country Manager, Go One Learning. And last but not least, Ms. Lorna Timba, Managing Director, Inspiring Ahead, Sundrang Berhad. So if you, let's let her take a seat first. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome all the panelists and moderator for Redefine. And Mr. Muneswaran Ramasamy, are you ready to start? Your mic, can you test your mic first? Is that all right?
Yes, ready.
All right,
Test
so
one.
I shall just give it to you and pass it over to you.
Thank you, well received.
The floor is yours.
Selamat pagi and selamat sejahtera and good morning para hadirin and datuk-datuk, datin-datin, fellow panelists, fellow moderators, and selamat pagi Sabah. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to start off with the title that has been actually chosen or given is Future-Proofing Malaysia's Training Industry. So this title is actually is a wide scope, and we have 3 distinguished panelists that will be sharing with us their thoughts and insights on how actually we can future-proof the training industry in Malaysia as a whole and in Sabah specifically as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. David Powell. He's the Managing Director of Asia Ability Training and Consulting, which is a company based in KK, in Sabah itself. And we have also Mr. Eric Sito, who is the Country Manager and Go One Learning from Kuala Lumpur. And on the far left there, we have our lady here, Ms. Lorna Timba, who is the Managing Director of Inspiring Ahead Sdn Bhd, which is a training company based out of KK Sabah as well. All right, so I would like to call upon Mr. David with regards to his presentation first. Mr. David?
If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up for this. Selamat pagi semua, and good morning. When people see me, they see this tall orang putih guy, and often the first question is, how long have you been in Sabah? I think they're expecting an answer of 2 weeks, 3 days, and actually maybe the surprising answer is 30 years. So I've been lucky enough and honored enough to live here in Sabah for probably more years than many of you have been alive. It's been an amazing experience, and 25 of those years I've been organizing and running training sessions with my organization called Asia Ability. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about our journey as an organization and what I feel maybe that means for the training industry here in Sabah, around Malaysia, and actually even further afield than that. So Asia Ability, as I said, we started here in Sabah. The HQ is still here in Wisma Merdeka in the middle of town, but now we also have offices in KL, in Singapore, in Bangkok, and actually even in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. So for 25 years, we've been delivering sort of engaging, powerful training experiences to people all over the Asia-Pacific region. I've been lucky enough, pre-COVID, to travel and deliver not just in Singapore, Malaysia, Bangkok, but also interesting places like Papua New Guinea and Sakhalin in Russia. All sorts of great experiences we've had. But of course, COVID came along. And part of how we were very lucky was over the last 15 years, we've built this amazing network of now 50 training providers all around the world. So this enabled us to bring the very best of global practices here to Sabah. But also, we're very proud at Asia Ability to also have Sabah-created training activities, training programs that are now delivered all around the world by our 50 partners that were designed and created right here in KK. Obviously, like everybody else, COVID 2.5 years ago fundamentally changed our lives, all of us, but also our business and the training providers' business everywhere. Fortunately, we managed to redefine quickly, and within a couple of months, back in March 2022, we managed to deliver our first virtual online training programs. Very interestingly, here in Sabah, we did some great events, programs with JPANs for the government servants, different departments, and also some Sabah companies. A little case study. We were honored enough, this was a HRD Corp funded activity for DHL. Obviously, DHL were very busy throughout COVID, but we managed to work and really partner with their HR department to create their first ever virtual trainings. And we delivered this over a 3-month period for over 1,500 of the DHL employees across Malaysia, all on Zoom. And we had this very engaging, powerful learning experience for all of them, from the very senior leaders to the frontline courier guys, who were all totally engaged, and we got some great evaluations. So that was a great case study of switching to virtual and being successful with that. Obviously, COVID made MCO. We were all stuck in KK previously. We would be flying around the region every week. Now we're back in KK. What do we do? Very scary time for everybody. How do we keep our 20 staff still employed? What are we going to do? So it was all about redefining and evolving. Actually, we took it beyond that. We not only ran great programs here in Sabah, and as Dada was sharing just now, there is a global opportunity. As we went online, as people were looking for the latest and greatest training from anywhere in the world, we managed to actually really go global and deliver training programs, workshops, activities for companies and participants all around the world, while literally sitting at home here in KK. We probably never would have imagined that was possible, and we were doing that very successfully for that. Obviously, technology was key. We integrated not just the Zoom platform and WebEx and all the other video conferencing, but also very quickly had training apps. So we built 2 apps with our partners and made those an integral part of the learning experience. Some virtual reality stuff, and this is definitely more of the future, and lots of online browser-based learning activities. Prior to this, most of our stuff would be in a classroom. So fundamental change through this evolution. But the core to everything, we call it the ability experience, is bringing engagement and energy to all the learning, all the training we offer. And of course, that was a challenge to bring that to the virtual world. But we really tried very hard and felt we were able to do that. So a similar sort of learning experience, even though at that time most people were sitting at home on Zoom, but still get that engagement, that powerful learning, which was what we all hope and we all want to do. Obviously, as things got a little bit better, we were able to do some physical distance stuff right outside the front here, this amazing convention center. This is an activity we call Beats Work. Very musical based. What a great opportunity. No one had been together for a year, bring people distanced but together to share a powerful experience with great learnings. Obviously now, as things get better, we come out of COVID, many clients we're finding are looking at more creative training venues, not just a meeting room in a hotel. We're very lucky also to have a training center out in Kulu, near Tamperoli, which is a wonderful outdoor natural environment. So this is becoming the sort of the new environment for training also. So we can run activities there and many other beautiful locations in Sabah. We're very lucky in Sabah to have this amazing natural environment, and I strongly encourage many employers to utilize that for your training programs. So thinking a little bit about future-proofing the industry. I think we really do need to do what we're talking about today and redefine. Not just step back and revert to what we used to do before COVID. Take those learnings, redefine, and move forwards better and bigger and more successful than ever. A lot of that is about us all upskilling, all of us in the industry, improving ourselves, learning the new technologies, learning how to use them properly, really leveraging the power of that. Not being scared by it, but really building on the opportunities. But although we talk a lot about online, the human connection is also still totally key for me when we're talking about learning and development. This is the connection between the people attending the classes, attending the workshops, what they can learn from each other, but also the connection between us as trainers with our participants. You can do that on Zoom or WebEx, but of course it's a little bit better when you can be in the room. So building that balance going forwards for that. So that's my little story of Asiability in the last 25 years, and now we'll take some questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. David. So, one thing that good came out of COVID is it actually has pushed us to embrace technology at a very accelerated rate. Yes or no? Right? And things that we didn't want to do, we are actually doing at the moment. And as much as spending hours looking at the screen, actually that has also enabled us to pick up new things that we have learned. So, Mr. David, you shared a little bit about how your training organization has actually evolved, especially since COVID has changed our world dramatically. What are some of the key lessons that you could share from your experience that actually has been drawn from that evolution for the training industry in Sabah?
Yeah, I mean, very good question. We do training. We want people to have lessons. So very much it's about what lessons we can draw from this experience over the last 2 years that obviously none of us expected, but building on that. And for me, there's a few key lessons. One is maybe achieving the impossible. If 2 years ago somebody had said to me, we want you to deliver a purely online learning experience for 1,000 employees over the next 3 months, powerful learning over a half day or a full day workshop, all online, I think Back then, I would have said that's not even possible. We won't even consider it. So that's a key lesson. Yes, it was almost a catalyst for us to, develop and push ourselves. So that's a key one. We can do it. We can achieve the impossible. A couple more, I think, was about partnerships. Actually, the employers, our clients, they also had never experienced this before. So it was really about building a very strong sort of partnership with those, all the potential clients, building together the online programs. And I think that key one is also, the key lesson is to take that feeling of partnership forwards. It's not just a transaction. We're not just selling a training program. How can we build together? The providers and the employers really mesh, really evolve the programs, but also the industry together. And as I mentioned, the other partnership part was the industry partnership. We were lucky to have this network that we built over many years, but also the fact that there was 50 world-class training providers collaborating. And actually, I think COVID sort of made us more open to sharing also. Everybody was in this difficult challenge at the same time, so being open to share, to build partnerships together, I think is a key future-proofing for the industry as well. We can work together much more than we used to in the past, is my opinion for that.
All right, so just to recap, so one of them is achieving the impossible. I mean, when we used to do face-to-face training, we had a limited number of sites, but with this online that we have gone on board, the number of trainings that could be done with the number of people have actually as well increased. The second thing is that you said about building a strong partnership. It's all about, at the end of the day, is the collaboration that takes place between the stakeholders, right? And taking that forward is building that relationship into a much stronger level. Mr. Eric or Ms. Lorna, do you have anything to add with regards to your perspective from your side with the evolution of the training with regards to COVID has actually accelerated technology? Mr. Eric, maybe?
Sure, I do have a lot to add, but I think I'll be covering that in my presentation as well, so I'll leave that, I'll wait for that.
Cool. All right, we go to the second question. What are some of the challenges that training providers or trainers face specifically in Sabah, and what are the possible solutions to overcome those challenges, Mr. David?
Yes, obviously we have challenges, and that was sharing the limited number of training providers and accredited trainers we have here in Sabah. But also, I think one of the challenges is many organizations, for understandable reasons, sort of put on hold all training during COVID. Yes, many companies and organizations were busy surviving, including us. But as we come out of that, I think the challenge is to persuade, encourage the employers, potentially with now quite a large HRD levy, to actually invest the time and the money in doing training again. I think many companies are struggling now to hire new staff, to fill all the places. And therefore, it can often feel, everyone's too busy to do training. But I think that the key challenge is to overcome that and realize the investment in training, and it is the time as well as the money, of course. The return on that is a real multiplier. So those limited number of staff you might have can be more effective, more efficient, more engaged, maybe more motivated if we can deliver great training programs for that.
Okay, thank you. I tend to agree. During the 2 years, we went through ups and downs. We were emotionally disturbed because there was people who have lost jobs, and the first thing that was put on hold was the trainings that actually was put on hold. However, as COVID moved on from the 6 months to the next 6 months, Zoom came on board, online training came on board, people started to reinvent themselves, reinvent the entire landscape from face-to-face to e-learning. E-learning has been around for actually a long time, and it's just that it has actually accelerated. So the thing is that how do we actually move forward step by step? So if we are opening our doors to the outside world now, and we are slowly stepping into the new norm, we will never get back to the old norm. We have to remember that it's actually a vicious cycle if we don't spend enough time and resources developing the people that we have working in our organizations, right? So either you do it or you don't do it. And if you're going to do it, how effectively are you going to actually do it? All right, thanks for that input. So moving on. So what are your views on the power of integrating digital innovation and technologies in delivering training as a whole?
Yes, I mean, technology is becoming an ever bigger part of our lives. As you said, I mean, one of the few benefits of COVID was it accelerated the adoption of many different types of technology. And obviously, we talked about Zoom and MS Teams and WebEx, the type of video conferencing platforms, which have become almost a norm in our lives. Most people had never done any training in that forum before. So yes, I think that type of platform still will remain and be important. The key is to do that well. Okay? It's not the same as doing a classroom training. You have to really upskill ourselves to be the expert facilitators in a virtual environment. It's different skills. You can do it, and we obviously invested a lot of time and effort, hopefully making ourselves as well as we could be delivering on those platforms. But also, as I mentioned a little bit, using apps, using virtual reality, augmented reality is coming also. Integrating the technology becomes key, I think, to the successful training, the future-proofing the training going forwards. And also the audience. I'm very old, I'm not used to technology. But most of our audience are younger and younger, and using technology is much more of a norm. So as training providers, I think we really need to integrate that and be at the very latest and greatest of technology to make, it's not just for the sake of it. The important thing is it's value add. So it's adding to the learning experience, the training and development program, and enhancing that, using as a tools to develop that learning, for me, is the key to technology.
All right, thank you. How many of you still remember Skype before Zoom came into the picture? And I was just having a chat with David before this session. I said, do you still recall Skype? And he mentioned yes, but I actually totally forgot how the function really works. So basically, what has happened is Skype didn't really evolve. However, Zoom has actually evolved. And the number of platforms that we have out there is actually quite a lot. And how does one actually pick up? So at the beginning of COVID, Zoom came into the picture, MS Teams came into the picture, WebEx has been around, and etc. So it's just that it took a while for a lot of, I'm not going to use the word old, I'm just going to always use the word forever young people out there. It's just that how we actually became, we had to unlearn and we had to relearn. This is the process that we go through when it comes to technology. And later, the third panelist, we have Ms. Lorna. She's going to be talking a lot more about what's out there, IR. And I still remember a conversation I had with somebody with regards to technology, David, about AI. Someone was telling me, the moment you adapt AI into your business or into your industries, people are going to be losing jobs, right? But as we move on and as we progress, actually AI is there to stay, and it's just that how we adapt that in our business circle, right? Okay, so technology is always evolving. I mean, look at your phone. You get updates on your phone to do an iOS update or to do a technology update on your Android, right? So as humans, we talk about human connections. How often also do you update yourself? How much time actually do you upgrade yourself? It is not just having a degree or master's, which you did many, many years ago, but the continuous update and upgrade of yourself also actually helps in future-proofing the training environment as a whole. All right, moving on.
Mr. Moderator, maybe.
Yes, Mr. Eric.
I just want to add a point to that. So I think a lot has been said about technology in the context of teaching and learning, and I don't really have anything to add with respect to that. But maybe perhaps the other is a big topic to talk about technology and learning, but the other change that I'd like to share with everyone is actually on the enterprise side, where the learning systems are actually getting more gelled together and more integrated together. So earlier on, my colleague was saying that, other than new ways of training, but you also need to have the desire to learn and the desire to teach. When I talk about systems gelling together, this is actually manifested in many ways. For example, the HR systems talking to the learning systems in ways that never been seen before. So therefore, when an organization plan the workforce of the future, what are the skills that are required in the workforce for the future, for example, they are more enabled to plan proactively for an organization. And these are the things that, changes in technology are making things a lot more seamless and a lot more connected. And therefore, the purpose of teaching and learning becomes a lot more deliberate and produces better results for an organization. I just wanted to add that point to what was added earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Eric. Actually, yes, we have actually moved quite a lot in terms of systems being actually seamless at this moment. All right, thanks for that input. All right, moving on, Mr. David. To be very direct, is online training or an in-person workshop more effective, according to your point of view?
Okay, a bit of a loaded question, seeing my colleague here, Eric, does online learning, and I do in-person learning. But genuinely, I think the future is a hybrid of both. The power of online learning is amazing. The eLati setup over the last year was incredible. The opportunity for all of us in Malaysia to have access to that quantity and quality of learning from all around the world is an amazing thing. None of us could have ever have attended that many training programs in our lives, but it's an opportunity out there. So yes, that is definitely here to stay and ongoing. I genuinely believe also adding to that is the in-person, whether it's virtual or literally in-person, training is vital as well. And it's about building the right hybrid, the right things in the right times. That's really key to that. Not doing everything online, not doing everything in person, but building the right balance of the two can be, for me, the most powerful opportunity for that. And it takes all of us to redefine how we do that, because it's very new to have this blend for any learning organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more to that. I'm a human person. I love dealing with people, and I love having interactive face-to-face. So COVID actually pushed me to move into Zoom. All right, it's a bit challenging to look at yourself in the screen, right? Right, I agree. So, Ms. Lona, you have something to add on?
Yeah, adding to what David has mentioned, I also agree that hybrid learning is going to be more prevalent, especially in corporate settings. And if the corporates are also focusing on CSR, for example, that could be also a very effective method of reaching out to doing corporate trainings for marginalized communities, the rural communities, especially in Sabah, where we have a lot of challenges, both infrastructurally as well as in the digital gap issue. So that would be one of the things that the corporate training can look into when we approach this as training providers or as trainers. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the landscape of Sabah is huge. I always say it's huge, especially in the interior side. So reaching out there is going to actually help. And what I feel is also the hybrid is, the learning is going to be on the go. It's no more so much on the classroom, but it's going to be on the go learning with eLatte is happening. There's a lot of apps that e-learning takes place. So if you're not preparing your team in the context of future-proofing them, then you're going to be behind in the playing field. All right, thanks. All right, moving on. Mr. David, what do you think are the most important aspects of future-proofing training industry as a whole in Malaysia and in a smaller context in Sabah?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things we've been talking about, I think, is the future. And it's a great point that Lona brought up. I mean, Sabah is not KK only. Okay, there's the rest of Sabah, which definitely has other challenges in terms of delivering training, whether it's online learning, it's face-to-face, but obviously vitally important. Many of the potential trainees are located all around Sabah. So how are we going to do that? So I think it's about improving and upskilling ourselves and what we offer and how we deliver it and offer it to the clients all around Sabah and around Malaysia, of course. I go back to what I said earlier about building great partnerships. Partnerships with our clients, partnerships with the HR and learning departments, partnerships with other training providers. We should be all collaborating, in my opinion, much more strongly so we can all offer a much better service and outcomes to everybody we have the honor of training.
All right, I agree with that, Mr. Devi. Yeah, the landscape is quite huge in Sabah. It's not only KK, we have Standakan, we have Tawa, we have Lahadatu, and etc., right? So the reach has to be actually out there, and we can actually use the technology to leverage on that reach as well. Okay? All right, thanks for your insight about how your company has actually evolved over the last 2 years and how that has actually moved forward. And looking at screen for 6 hours, 8 hours, someone was sharing they had like 14 meetings last week in a day over Zoom. It's like 14 meetings in a day. Wow, that's quite interesting. So what time do you start and what time do you end, right? So digitalization is here, technology is here. It's just that how we become agile and adaptable to the environment. I always like to use the analogy of the chameleon. If you look at the chameleon, it always adapts to the environment. So how do we do that as well? How do we adapt to that environment? All right, thank you, Mr. David. So moving forward, we heard already from Mr. David from Asia Ability. I would like to move one step notch or one step higher in terms of technology with Mr. Eric. Mr. Eric is the country manager of Go1, and he's going to share with us his perspective about technology that he has seen globally that has been implemented. Thank you, Mr. Eric. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Muniz. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sabah. Good morning. I'm going to structure my sharing with you today in the following manner. I'm going to talk a little bit about global, because I'm from a global company and I also have access to global data. So I'm going to share some information about what's happening in the world. And I'm going to bring all of us back to Malaysia and to Sabah. Okay? And I'm going to start talking about change and talking about redefining with a beanbag. If you look at global offices and workplaces, I'm just citing my own personal company, my own personal experiences. We've invested a lot of money on beanbags, on pool tables. And just to share with you, in my office, we have a slide that can go from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor. It's quite cool. So when we have visitors that come to our office, they can go in a slide and then they go to the 1st floor. It's very cool. And then COVID happened. And then nobody uses the slides anymore, and nobody uses the bean bags anymore, and nobody uses the pool tables anymore. And if you think about it, all the ideas about workplace and workplace technology, where you have nice office rooms, you have cool whiteboards and all those kind of technologies, suddenly becomes obsolete, and you need to have a different way of doing things. Okay? Now the reason why I'm mentioning this is because things are changing. So the example of a beanbag and pool table is that workplaces technologies have changed. But if you think about it really deeply, why are organizations spending so much money on pool tables? And the reason is because organizations care about staff. They care about staff learning, and they care about staff engagement. Because we want staff to learn, and we want staff to be engaged in an organization. And if our employees are engaged and are learning and are happy, they will be productive staff, which I will be sharing information with you shortly. Okay? So it's all about our employees. So workplace technology changes affects us. But other than workplace technology changes, workers are also changing, right? Younger workers are coming into the workforce. They have different needs from the older ones. And even the older ones, for example, because of the last 2 years, our habits have changed. We have different expectations. We expect companies to be able to allow some of us to work from home, for example. If not all the time, at least some of the time. We want to have a hybrid type of a work environment and things like that. Now, other than workers are changing, work is also changing. Because some of the skills that are required to do some of the work in the past is no longer the same anymore. For example, in an organization, if you want to have a meeting to discuss a plan, In the past, you need to see each other face to face to talk about it. Only then you can discuss and to decide on matters. Today, you don't need to have that. My colleagues talk about Zoom, we talk about Skype, but I also want to talk about Slack, and I want to talk about Trello, I want to talk about Miro boards, for example, and these are the tools that I use every day. And because of all of this, we actually don't need to meet face to face, but we're actually extremely productive and extremely efficient. Just to quote a personal example for myself, last Friday I have 8 meetings a day. Friday before that, I actually have 14 meetings a day. I cannot do that face to face. I come from KL, just to drive in KL, at most I can do 3 meetings a day. So if you compare that, the level of expectation and the level of efficiency is no longer the same anymore. But what I like to bring back to everybody today is that the heart of everything is our employee. And we want our employee to be engaged, and we want our employee to be better, to be reskilled, to be upskilled, so that they can be efficient and they can perform. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So, learning and development actually has taken a very wild reset during the COVID period, because it was forced upon us to adopt technology at a very rapid pace. But it's always been there. It's always coming. Okay? But other than the mode of delivering content, what is important here is that what is the outcome of delivering the content? So the first thing I'd like to highlight to you is learning and development is very cool. Everybody loves to learn. But does it really contribute any value to the organization? Does it actually improve the ROI? Apparently it does, which is what I'm trying to show over here. Globally, for example, my organization has done a lot of research through our own user groups, and we've discovered that companies that actually invest in their people and try to build more engaged employees actually have a better competitive advantage and actually better ROI. In fact, there was a study done by IBM that says that every dollar that they invested generates $30 back for them in productivity. So there is a real tangible value and benefit for organizations to look at learning and development in a very systematic and strategic way, because it does matter for your organization. On top of that, we talked about workers and workers' changes. And this is about staff retention and engagement. From our study, we know that 94% of the employees would like to stay in an organization longer if they are actually learning and they're actually developing as a professional. I'll just share with you my actual, in my company, our actual policy. In my company, each employee is given $350 a year to learn. We can learn anything, whatever you want. The company gives us $350. If you finish consuming that, you can go to the boss and justify for another $350. Okay? So personally, for myself, I've learned programming. Okay? I'm currently learning French with my wife. Okay? And I've also bought an Audible book, okay, which is totally unrelated to my work, but the organization is okay. So the idea behind this is we want to have engaged staff, because engaged staff is a happy staff. A happy staff is a productive staff. Ultimately, it contributes back to the efficiency and the productivity of an organization. Okay? I have some studies to share here. These are global studies. And the study basically showed that 87% of millennials, that means young people, value learning and development in workplace. Okay? They are not the same as us anymore. They are these young people, they want to be in an organization, they see themselves there temporarily. They expect that experience with your organization to be a fulfilling experience, that they can learn from that, and then they can go to the next step. So this is what people are telling us right now. Okay? And 76% of employees are saying that company would be more appealing if it offered additional skills. So as an online provider, what we realize is there are a lot of people, like the example I gave you about my own budget, right? A lot of people are actually leading the charge of what they want to learn. It's no longer the HR manager telling them what they should learn, but they themselves are coming out and say, I also want to learn. I want to learn this, I want to learn that, okay? So this is what we are seeing globally. Another example of that is, again, global data, is about neurodiversity. The idea here is that people are becoming more opinionated, and there's a lot more opinions from young workers especially that they want to support. Actually, if you look at Europe, one of the main reasons why online learning is so popular is because they want to reduce the carbon footprint. They want to have lesser cars on the road, for example. By having online learning, you have lesser cars on the road. So they feel that they're contributing back to the society, back to the environment, back to the world. So things like that are actually driving reasons for this to happen. And the last one actually is to my earlier point, is about closing the skills gap. Things are changing. I'll just take an example of marketing. You know, a long time ago, if you are a marketing person, your skill is about advertising. Your skill is about running an event, for example. But today, if you do not understand digital, you do not understand, social media, you do not understand AdWords or, search engine marketing, how can you survive? Because those things are the most important things, right? And I'm quite sure a lot of people here who's in this room knows about this event through social media as well. So this is the so-called new skills. So we need to worry about the people that we have today and whether they are ready for the new work, the new skills that are required of them. So in our studies, we actually asked business owners, and a lot of the business owners, 75% of Australian CEOs, and this is Australia, is extremely concerned about skills gap and worried that the existing workforce is not ready to handle the new requirement. So earlier on, I was talking about, say, my organization and how we work, all right? We are working from home, a lot of us. But how do we have our meetings? How do we do our planning? How do we decide the budget for next year? How do we come up with a strategy? So all of those are coming from new skills on tools, technology, work group management, dynamics of working in teams that you don't see face to face. So all of this new way of doing things are things that the new managers, for example, of today needs to learn in order to be more productive in the near future. So these are some of the examples. Okay? So, like I said, I'm trying to bring global to Malaysia. So I talked about how learning and development are getting important and changing. Here, I'd like to just share some examples of a global company. This company does not operate in Malaysia, but I thought to be relevant, I'll choose an oil and gas company. This is actually real data. It's coming from a user of my organization. So this large global oil and gas company has 15,000 users using my system, which is about 1/3 of their employee, okay? Out of these 15,000 users, they actually consume about 3 million learning minutes a year, okay? But what I like to draw your attention to is to the bottom right curve. So what happened was that the company had the vision to roll out staff empowerment and employee-led learning to their organization. And look at the chart on the bottom right. The take-up is just amazing, okay? And all over the world, in fact, most of the organizations that I see are like that, okay? The font is a little bit small, so I'll just have to talk through it to you. Essentially, the top two charts with the world map shows where the learners are coming from. So in this case, they're coming from North America, they're coming from Australia. But like I said, this is not a Malaysian company, so obviously they're coming from all of these countries. But the bottom chart basically talks about how they use it. And here I just want to tell you that the concept here is about learning anytime, anywhere. So the devices are not just about the computer or the desktop, so to speak, but people are learning from iPads, people are learning from the phones, a combination of iPads and phones, and real face-to-face, and a combination of various mediums, okay? Actually, mediums are not important anymore because it's got to be very seamless. So this is what I'm trying to share with you from a real-life case study of a large organization. And it's a little bit small to see, but the right-hand side basically showed you the top courses that this organization learned, okay? And I'll just read some to you. For example, there are a lot of IT knowledge in there. There's a lot of wellness, well-being, mental health kind of topics in there. So these are the ones that are most used and most consumed. Remember, these are all asked by the employees. I believe it's because of COVID, mental health. But regardless, there's a bigger concept about awareness, a bigger question about involvement. So those are the kind of courses that I see people registering to. Okay? Now, what I like to share with you, I say it's still on trends, right? I want to share with you a go-on story. And here I'm not trying to talk about my company and advertise it, but you look at my company, we are an e-learning company. Our work is just to do e-learning, okay? And what happened is that within the last 1-2 years, we've grown so fast. So today we have 12 offices around the world, Malaysia being one of it. And Malaysia, you'll be happy to hear, is a regional center for ASEAN. So we actually have a lot of confidence in this country and this administration. The point I like to highlight to you is the $2 billion company. So we are a double unicorn. So we are valued at $2 billion US. But what's interesting is 6 months ago, we were a single unicorn. So from 6 months ago to today, we are suddenly $2 billion. So if I have shares in GoOne, which I don't, if I have shares in GoOne 6 months ago and today, my value is double. What happened? So the point is, it's not just about GoOne. The point is about the technology. People are just investing in the technology. So we are talking about what is really here to stay, how to future-proof your organization. This is proof of how you should future-proof your organization. This is where people are putting their money in. Who is putting the money in this? Example here is Microsoft. Microsoft injected $200 million into the organization. And right now, their value is about half already because the company just doubled this, in value. So, you know what I'm saying? So people are actually investing in this. And in Asia, we have 80,000 online courses. And right now, we are actually in Malaysia. We are new, okay? It's a global company. It's about 8 years old. But my team and I, we're just 6 months old in Malaysia. So we are new setup. Okay, how does online learning work? Something like this. So this is a GoOne model, but essentially is something like this. So what happens here is that we sign up courses with schools, okay? So on the left, you see a lot of schools. You see things like maybe names that will be very familiar to everyone, like Harvard, like Skillsoft, like Microlearn, like Microsoft. These are names that you're probably very familiar with, but there are a lot of schools. So essentially, we can bring the best schools in the world to Malaysia. And that's possible simply because it's Industry 4.0, right? It's all about technology, you know? And it doesn't matter whether you're in Kota Kinabalu or you're in Kuala Lumpur, it's the same. You're able to access the Harvard content, the same Harvard content that somebody in San Jose will be able to access. It's now all available. So companies like us are set up that way. So on the left-hand side, we get a lot of schools to sign up with us. And then on the right-hand side, they are actually the customers. So what we do is we work with organizations. So most of the time, people don't know who is GoOne because we work with organizations. We are the guy at the back. So we work with, say, for example, here would be, say, L'Occitane, okay? So we work with an organization like that, work with the HR manager and say, what do you want to teach your employee? Maybe they want to teach management, maybe they want to teach leadership. So this is where we work with them on what a learning plan would be for their team, and then we provide training content to them through online method. And then they are the one who is going to be assembling this with real-life training providers or just pure online. They will be the one to do that. But this is the kind of model that we have. And this is the kind of model that people are investing lots of money in, and you can see the growth in my organization. This is, so to speak, this is the future of the world, where training content are being globalized. So I'll wrap up with this, and what propels me to join my organization in the first place. My organization has this vision, which is to help 1 billion people to learn. And I'm happy to be in ASEAN, because in ASEAN has 660 million people. But the most important is the 33 million in Malaysia that I love so much. The whole idea is to try to get everybody to be in love with learning, so that we can provide, content to engage them and to give everyone a better opportunity in life. So with that, I conclude. Thank you so much.
Eric, thank you very much. Wow, there's quite a lot of data that I saw there, and the numbers, I didn't see any 4D there actually, just like 7 numbers, figures, and etc. Very good insight in terms of how e-learning platform has actually taken off from the time I think I shared with some of you in the room earlier. E-learning was very boring and monotonous. You just have to keep clicking and listening to someone is talking. But e-learning has actually evolved a lot over the last 2 to 3 years. So David, there's a couple of questions that I'd like to go through, and one of them is, are there any specific data or insights that you can share about Sabah's e-learning ecosystem?
Thanks, Manish. Thanks, Manish. I think the short answer is very similar. I think globally what we see is that people who are using online learning, the profile of it by gender, by choice of courses and all that is very similar globally. So we see that to be very similar. So when you see global trends, for example, and you dovetail that to a Sabah deep dive, you will notice that the data is quite similar. The only probable deciding factor would be internet access. So we should make, for example, a lot of content available or not available, because the more interactive the learning is, the more bandwidth hungry it is, the more demand it has on computing abilities. So if you need to have good computers in front of you who can process the things fast enough. For example, like the programming course that I took, it actually gave me a sandbox for me to do my program, and then it actually real time tells me whether I did it right or did it wrong, for example. Now, if I don't have good computing capabilities, I won't be able to do so. So it's more of that. But say if you're in Sabah and if you have that and you have good bandwidth and all that, statistically, what I see from my data, there's really not much of a difference from a global trend.
So basically, we are on par, right? All right, good to hear that. So do you think e-learning is something only for white-collar workers, or would blue-collar workers use it too? Eric?
I have an opinion, but I'm not sure whether my esteemed colleagues also can pitch in. My personal view is there are maybe 3 different types of training content. So the first one is more of compliance, right? And the second one is more about skills or something more technical. And the last one is more about professional development. So if I talk about compliance, it is about the basic thing that one person needs to have to know when you work in an organization, for example. So things like, if I work in an organization, I want to know my company's products. I want to know my company's CEO. I may also, let's say for example, if I'm a bank, I need to know, for example, data protection. right? Data privacy or occupational health and safety, for example. So those are compliance skills to me. And I think for compliance skills, it is agnostic to whether you're a white collar or a blue collar. Both also need to know. And sometimes it's also by statutory design, you need to tell your employee, because if you don't, then you are negligent on your part, right, as an employer. So you need to disseminate those courses anyway. So that's the first one. Now the second one is about technical skills. Now technical skills varies, really depends on the type of job. Say for example, if you're a software developer, skills are always needed to be upgraded because there are new tools all the time and so on and so forth. So for someone who's in IT, who's a white-collar worker, would find that this is a lot more coherent to their design, but a blue-collar worker might not. And the last one is professional development, professional skills, leadership, strategy, more global thinking and things like that. That would be probably a more white-collar type of users. So in summary, I think both blue and white, but the consumption from the white-collar workers would be slightly different, more towards the higher level type of courses that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, all right, good. Last question. What is your view, because you have 80,000 courses in Asia, what is your view of global content and local content? Is this even important?
Okay, thank you so much for that. Actually, we have 150,000 courses, but we only have 80,000 in Asia, in Malaysia. The reason is because of licensing rights and also censorship rules. There are things that is not allowed to be showed in some Asian countries, for example, Malaysia included. So that's why we only have 80,000. But more to your question, Muniz, I think there is global content, which are, to some extent, they're the best schools in the world, and I quote companies like Harvard or MIT Sloan. They have lots of good content, and they should be the best in the world, or one-off. And those are good global content that will be, I think, used by everyone, including Malaysians. But no matter how good they are, there are content that is local in nature that is required. Take, for example, taxation. The local content will be taxation rules in Malaysia, as per the latest budget, for example, right? So no matter whether you're from Harvard or Cambridge or Oxford, you won't be able to talk about taxation in Malaysia unless you know the budget in Malaysia last year, right? Similarly, a lot of local content will be like that as well. But the other point about that is also not about local, but it's about localized, okay? So things like languages, for example, back to the compliance skills, the technical skills, and the professional development skills. I think for the professional development skills, English is the common language, and a lot of material that is available in English. So I don't see any problem in uptake in English as well. But when it comes to compliance skills, for example, I think the ability to have local languages is a lot more important. And to that point, actually Go1 being in ASEAN is not just trying to work with consumers who's going to learn, but we're working with training partners to build content as well that would be in local languages so that we can address this part of the market.
Right, thanks. I totally agree with that, because global content and local content, there is a need for that as well. What's important is how we can get that message across to the wider market out here. All right, so that was a good insight from Mr. Eric with regards to e-learning. So you could see the transition from Mr. David to Eric, how actually the evolve has happened, and how each of them actually has redefined the landscape of learning in Malaysia as a whole and in Sabah as well. And then we move on now to our last panelist, Miss Lorna, who is going to take us a notch up actually in terms of technology. All right, so over to you, Miss Lorna.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Selamat pagi. All right, before I introduce myself, I'd like to start with this slide that you see right in front of you. What do you see? Okay, of course, I would hear a baby. Maybe, what age do you think this baby is? Around 12 months, 1 year old plus, yeah? And then what else do you see? A tablet, yeah? Maybe a phone. It looks like a tablet. What else do you see? Right. I couldn't quite hear, but okay, I'll try to translate what you're trying to say here. So, okay, maybe I can tell you from my perspective what I see. Okay, this is how technology is today. Okay, it's very important for us to understand how technology is today, because one of the technology or the digital divide that we have consistently is between ages and age gap between the digital. You need to understand from my perspective, when I started to be exposed to technology back in 1989, I had my first computer, a PC, that is almost as big as the cabinet. It was running on an i386 microprocessor. So that is 32-bit microprocessor. That's the technology I had in 1989. And then, this is my phone. I'm holding a phone right now, an Oppo A93. The microprocessor is not 32-bit. It's 8 gigabytes. It's more than a bit. Okay? 1 byte, do you know how many bytes is in how many bits is in 1 byte? Okay, it's 16 bits in 1 byte. This is 8 gigabytes. So that was in 1989, and now it's 2022. That's just about 30, 40 years gap, between 30 to 35 years. That's how technology has evolved, and that is only on the physical side. The usability is what's more important here. The technology and the usability compared to 30 years ago, where we were told that, oh, be careful, don't touch the computer. If you turn it on, something will blow up. You know, I don't know if any of the all the generations are here, the forever young generations. I don't know if you've ever gone through those kind of phase where you are sitting in front of a computer and they say, be careful, don't play around with the computer. It's not just expensive, something will happen. Okay. So those are the technology of that era that I was brought up in. The technology of the era that you see with the millennials and until now is this. How easy it is that even a 1 or 2 year old can learn in, I'm sure, in about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay? And this is the kind of mindset we need to have now, because a lot of corporates, especially as training providers, as trainers, we hear a lot of resistance. Our speakers have already talked about resistance. Even the CEO in his welcoming speech has talked about resistance. And it's not just from the corporates themselves, but also by the trainers, by the training providers who think that technology is so hard, is so difficult, when in actual fact, the technology is in their palms already. That's how different it is. So we need to look at technology now as something that will ease our lives. Yeah? So that is the kind of mindset I need us to have as technology, as trainers, as technology, as solution providers. Trainers, I would like to put us as solution providers, and I'll explain that a bit in my next slides. So a little bit about me. I usually have a tough time explaining what I do. When people ask, hey, what do you do? To certain people, I tell themselves, especially when I'm in a consultant mode, I say, I'm a technologist, I help people, I'll give consultation on cloud, on, on business intelligence, or in software development. For others, if I talk to tech people, I will say, I'm a software developer because I do code. I build software and mobile apps. And then to other people, I would say, I'm a certified trainer for HRDC. I have a certified HRDC. I'm a trainer for HRDC. How do you put that? But anyways, I tell them that. And then to other people, sometimes I say, to establish myself as an authority on what I teach or what I help them with, I say I'm an author. I wrote a book on programming, how to build an app for beginners. So things like that. It's a bit difficult, but basically my education, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. But I ended up with my first job as a webmaster for Sabah Electronic Government, sabah.gov.my. That was my first job coming out of graduation, because at the time, during university days, I created a lot of websites. At that time, around 1996, 97, websites were growing. The website technology, the World Wide Web was growing. So during the university times, I loved to create websites. And I created enough websites that I have built a portfolio by the time I graduated and got my first job as the first webmaster for Sabah Electronic Government. But why I'm trying to say all this is because I'm actually attracted to IT more, not because of the tools, not because of the World Wide Web, but it's more about how technology helps me to build the solutions the way I want. Okay? So I see technology and I see the websites as one of the ways I can build solutions. Or maybe I can help people solve their problems with my solutions. That's how my mind was going to when I saw websites at that time. And so a lot of the technologies now even, there's a lot of web-based technologies that you can use right now. Even Facebook, it started from a website, now it evolves into a mobile app. So that's how technology has evolved for every one of us, yeah? So we talk about IR for technology specifically. So IR stands for the Industrial Revolution. We are going into the fourth Industrial Revolution. The first one was agricultural, and we evolved and evolved and evolved. The fourth Industrial Revolution, or sometimes you see it as IR 4.0, 4IR, it means the same thing. We are using the technologies that as what you are looking at the screen right now. Mostly about cloud technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, IoT. Okay, you've heard all those things. You know all those things, but how do I keep up? You know, that's what more important. How do I keep up? So we need to, as trainers and training providers, we need to take a step back and look at how the corporates or our customers see IR, how they use it, how they plan to implement it in their businesses if they haven't implemented IR4 yet. Okay? So we as their solution providers need to give them a better overview of how IR4 can help their businesses. Yeah? So when we talk about IR4 technologies, we've already seen this happening now. Okay? Supply chain, they use cloud technology in order to connect to suppliers. The businesses connect to their suppliers via their online systems. And these online systems have what they call, I'm going a bit technical here, they have what they call APIs, application interface, that talks to each other's business systems. In other words, if business A has a system and supplier A has their own built-in systems, the cloud technology enables them to integrate within each other so that there are less manual processes going on. When they integrate, means they connect to each other's system and everything in the background runs automatically. There's no more people sitting in front of the computer checking whether the information is correct, whether an email needs to be sent, whether a request order needs to be paid. There's no more there once you are connected to each other's system. And that's how cloud technology helps. It really accelerates things. Production via automation. Okay, you may have heard, if you look back at the previous slide, IR4 technologies, there's a lot of words that being used in IR4 technologies, smart factories and all those things, yeah. So I actually, because I help more of the SMEs in both goods producing as well as services sectors, I usually change smart factories into automation. I address it in terms of the robotics, IoT use, because each of these kind of technology, it helps in producing, whether it be a tangible good or intangible service. And then you have tech communication. Everyone is using WhatsApp now. That's mobile technology. And then we have marketing. Now when we want to ask for customer service, a lot of businesses now, post-COVID, they will tell you, please use our online system. Please contact us through chat. We have in our website, such as Asia, KWSP, they're using chat bots now. So those are actually, they don't really have first customer-facing support staff in the first level. Once you need more help, then they go back to the second level and escalate the information to an actual support officer. So that's how chatbot works. They detect what you want to ask and gives you answers based on what you ask. Okay, they are keywords. So chatbots are automated customer service. And then you have your research and development within a corporation, within a business, and even quality assurance. They need a lot of data, and data is now possible and are able to be processed and interpreted more precisely via big data. I mentioned that in the previous slide. And this big data helps to create some data visualizations on, okay, if I have these sales in, for example, in Sabah, it's actually related to the marketing efforts I created somewhere else in Penang. Why is that? Okay, when you have big data, the technology behind big data, which is the artificial intelligence, are able to create some connections between what data you have and actually automatically output this and give you some insight, business insights to how you, what are the areas within your business that you have not noticed. If you have already been using, as a corporate, if you already have been using Microsoft Power BI, or even the advanced version of Microsoft Excel, the latest versions of this Microsoft Excel and Power BI will give you those insights. Okay? So those are the IR4 in a nutshell. Oh, Lorna, there's too many information. What are all this? It's okay. What's more important is that when we talk about IR4, or even technology in general, we are actually talking about the enablers of that business. I always tell people whenever I meet them and they talk about technology and they ask me, Ron, how do you keep up with all this technology? technology, especially now, because it's so ingrained in us, everyone uses or at least have a handphone now. Even a 2G handphone is considered technology already. Technology need not be a hard skill anymore. It's not something that you learn like you want to learn Microsoft Word or a specific tool. It's not a hard skill anymore. Technology should be something like a soft skill, like a communication skill. There are things that we have in our lives, that we know in our lives, that we learn in our lives. The concepts, the core concepts are all the same. Only the tools have evolved. Okay, I'll give you an example like marketing. Now there's so many trainings going on about social media marketing trainings, how to use chatbots, or even how to use instant messaging for your marketing. What the core is about is still the same. You still communicate. What do you communicate? Your product. Okay? You also communicate to your customers, the people, the product, people. You also use the core concept of marketing, which is your pricing. You also need to still have that core concept of place or distribution. But now place, you don't even have to have a physical presence. You just go online, open a website online, and that's your place, that's your physical presence. So the core of everything that we know as workers, as entrepreneurs, or as business people stays the same. Only the tools evolve. And when the tools evolve, remember the baby picture just now? The tools have always been there. It's just more easy to use, to be honest. The challenge is in terms of not just budgetary constraint, but which one should I use first, or which one should I learn first? That's the actual challenge that you have when you want to address technology as a whole, or even IR4 as a whole. As trainers or training providers, when you look at how do I evolve my solutions, how do I evolve my training to assist these corporates and incorporate IR4 training for these corporates. You can look into these the corporate components of whether you want to assist the business, the people inside the business, the product that the business is selling, or even address the processes. So based on your expertise or which one you can help the business with, you look into these components and then develop the latest solutions. I always call trainings as solutions because you're actually trying to solve a problem for that company. So you develop solutions based on this and not just based on the IR4 solutions. IR4 and technology in general needs to already be embedded in your services, in your products, in your training products. Yeah? So that's actually how you address IR4. So when you focus on how do I help a company grow, you can actually focus on helping them to adapt, to accelerate, or to be resilient with their businesses. Those are key things that you need to focus. And it's not, and IR4, like I said, is a tool to enable. Okay? Whenever we go into exploring tools together with a business, it's always about how do I use this to solve that? How do I use IR tool, automated bots, in order to make our response to our customers faster, more automated. One of the speakers say, computers are always on 24/7. They are always on. Robots can run 24/7 without rest. Can we as a business exploit that? So as training providers as well, we need to be able to solve that for them. So when we market ourselves as training providers or as trainers, it would be best, one of the suggestions would be to market yourself as a strategic partner for their growth. Okay? Strategic partner for their growth, and you as a trainer can be the subject matter experts instead of just a trainer that comes and goes. You provide value for them, and then you as a trainer will also need to adapt together with the business. So the more you understand the business, the more you can solve the business, the faster you can grow as a trainer. There's a McKinsey research recently conducted by McKinsey and Company. It says there that skills acquired or deployed through work experience contributes on average 46% of a person's lifetime earnings. Okay? 46% of a person's lifetime earnings, it contributes. What they learn in work, half of the things that they learn that help them make money, this is how I put it. Half of the things that they learn to make them money, they learn it while at work. Okay, how do we look at it in a different way? Okay, we've been talking about, someone mentioned about schools, the education systems, and so on and so forth. We spend about 12 years in school, and then after we graduate from school, we go to university, and then we go to work. That would be a total about 15 to 17 years of education before we actually learn something that could bring value to us. But what happens if after those 17 years of spending in our education system, our workforce are trying to look for work and they get none because of challenges of maybe their education level maybe not enough, or their maybe just lack of opportunities. Okay, maybe as training providers, as trainers, we could look at it in a different way. And I mentioned this before about corporate social responsibility. And I'm trying to look at this in a different way in terms of getting people trained earlier on, especially new graduates, and then putting value sooner into them by getting them into the workforce for 6 months, like what we are doing now, post-COVID. Okay? As trainers, we need to look at it as not just train the current workforce in an organization, but also the future workforce that's coming in. And we need to work together, not just with the businesses, not just with organizations, but also with the government. And the government, I think the government so far has been very assistive. It's just that we need to explore more ways to take on those opportunities. There are so many incentives nowadays that's out there by the government. We as training providers, especially in Sabah, we as training providers and trainers need to just get that opportunity and look it in a way where it's not just going to be about survivability of a business, but also to sustain that business by preparing the future workforce. Okay, so when you want to look into corporate growth and preparing a future workforce, you can look into adaptability, acceleration, and resilience of a company. When you look into helping a business to adapt to the new economy, especially into IR4, we need to consider that the current economy now is very online. That's what low-touch economy means. We are very online, we're not face-to-face, and so we need to make sure that we can help businesses as trainers, as subject matter experts, to adapt to this low-touch economy. If we still want to do business as usual, how will that evolve in a low-touch economy? How can we still be very personalized to a customer in a low-touch economy? And we also need to talk about distributed working. It will be here to stay. Even though COVID will come and go, even in a recent research, by McKinsey as well, there are a flood of workers, I think mostly done in the West, the research, which says that people are leaving the workforce because they don't have the flexibility to work at home or wherever they are. So we need to help businesses or organizations to prepare themselves for a distributed workforce. And fluid workforce is addressing what Eric has mentioned just now about going and learning, self-learning, even self-leadership, okay? Towards going into a self-leadership role where they are more empowered, and from a blue-collar worker going into a white-collar worker, there needs to be a growth in the workforce for them to stay on in the organization, especially quality workers. Quality workers, usually one of the characteristics of a quality worker is that they're very knowledge-based. They're willing to learn. And when the person, that knowledge worker, could not grow in a company, they will leave for a better company that allows them growth. So we as training providers, as trainers, need to also cater and consider the way how we can help the business adapt to a fluid workforce. In terms of accelerating, like I said, technology, IR4 specifically, allows for accelerated growth. So we need to teach them the skills, digital skills specifically. Digital skills would be how do you communicate in a digital way in terms of, for example, last time we used to still insist on faxing information in, but now everything is online. You can actually just take a picture of that document to verify your whatever documentations that you have. And then there's this IR4 coming in with artificial intelligence, with intelligent document scanning. With intelligent document scanning under IR4, it allows the company to use technology to automatically sort, automatically identify, and automatically verify information in a document. So this has to do with contracts as well. One of the technology I highlighted in IR4 just now in my slide is blockchain technology. So that has to do with contracts as well. And certain banks in the West have been using blockchain technology, not just for verification, but also to accelerate their process of accepting whether the person is financially qualified to get a loan or not. Okay, so that's all the digital skills. And the digital skills will also need to include the way, the latest technology that is happening. They don't even actually have to use the tool, but they need to be aware of the upcoming technologies that are happening in their business. And that's where you as a training provider, that's where you as a trainer can come in and help them. And then mobile learning, you know about the mobile phone. Everyone knows that. Everyone has access, at least most of us has, yeah? And then individualized training. Because of the mobility, because internet is a bit more far-reaching now, especially in Sabah, although there are some rural areas that could not be reached, but it's still possible for us now because of the reach of how internet helps us to go. We can actually individualize training. Okay, so those are the things that we need to consider when we talk about accelerating. And then the resilience. These are very important. This is this is last but not least. Something that you need to consider when you look into providing support, providing training for the organization. Paradigm shifts, mindset shifts. That is very important, because without cultural change, without the organization itself not being able to adapt to all this, not being able to accelerate their business because of the mindset, that will actually stop them from growing the company, even going into markets that they have never thought before. You remember about what I mentioned, big data? Amazing what big data can provide you. Because the big data, the more data you have, the more business insights this artificial intelligence can give you, and the more decision making you can make in order to change your business around. Okay? And the paradigm shifts also needs to include the work culture and the learning culture. Eric mentioned about L&D, okay? The learning and development. There needs to be something, some ways for the organization to adapt, to accelerate. And if the organization doesn't already have an L&D established, you can come in as a training provider, as a trainer, to provide them with the solutions for their learning process. Okay? So in closing, what can we do as a training provider, as a trainer, to help with the businesses who are already in IR4 or are going to explore IR4? What can we do? Okay, so first and foremost, other than being a subject matter expert, we need to be a strategic partner with them, help them to establish a learning and development process. But then, as a training provider ourselves, we ask, oh, Lorna, where can I start? What should I do? There's so many technologies, especially in IR4. What should I start with? How do I go about doing this? It's all right. Just start with what you know now and base it on the problems that you think the organization have based on your training needs analysis. You know, if you've already been training other people, other organizations, other businesses, you already know the pain points. And the pain points have already been documented by you through your training needs analysis. That's just one way of you evolving yourself together with the organization and tackling the growth of that company using IR4. So those are the things that I can share for today. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Lorna. That was a handful, right? IR4 and good insight, and also a refresher for those of you who are familiar already of IR4 and maybe even be using it in your companies with regards to automation, chatbots, and etc. All right, so Ms. Lorna, I have a couple of questions before we open the questions to the audience. So, are there any real differences between corporate educations that need pre and post IR4?
Pre and post IR4.
Yeah. Are there any differences between corporate educations?
Like I mentioned, the core has always been there. Only the tools evolve. So what we need to do is just to be in tune with how we are learning. And hybrid learning, or actually e-learning in general, is a much preferred way of tackling it. So the core the concepts of learning is still there. Only how do we engage with the learners is what's more important. And how we engage with the learners is based on what tools we use. There are many ways for us to engage with learners. I think gamification has always been a very go-to way to get people engaged in a face-to-face. Remember, whenever we do some ice-breaking or ice-breaking or just to break the monotony, we usually do games. And it's also still possible in online mode. There are some tools in online mode that are sometimes even built in to things like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, and so on and so forth, that can help you to engage them. Quizzes, even fun building blocks or word guesses. And that's how you actually just turn around and twist your knowledge in training to cater for the online learners. The costs are still the same. Pre-COVID is still the same.
All right, thank you for sharing that. Okay, we will shortly get into the questions. If you haven't scanned your questions in Slido yet, you can start keying in your question there. Actually, I have one last question, Ms. Lona. Sabah is huge, right? So how do we address this digital training in areas where internet connectivity is a challenge?
How do we address the connectivity problems, yeah? Okay, I like to mention CSR a lot. I like to mention that because it really comes down to collaboration with not just between the trainers and the organization that you're training, as well as their learners that we're training. It's not just that. It really takes a whole bunch of groups, even externally, to assist us. And this is, I think, where hybrid learning comes in. If you are familiar with IR4, there are technologies now that are, in terms of hardware, are pretty cheap. So in case, for example, rural areas where internet is not reachable, there is a way for the citizens or any corporates to actually build their own infrastructure to boost the internet. So maybe some of you have already been using it, Internet Booster. Those tools are about less than 100 ringgit per machine. The better ones are just slightly above a few hundred. But there are ways in which you can allow them to reach a bigger, a wider connectivity range in rural areas, for example. Because rural areas, the internet is a bit spotty. However, it's possible, and it also requires someone, a hybrid reach. That means maybe a face-to-face, maybe. But if face-to-face is not possible, that's where your external parties come in. That means you need to collaborate with any grassroots communities that are already supporting the learners that you are in. For example, the youth of a rural community, or maybe the stateless children. There are already groups that are helping, and you as training providers, as trainers, can come in and maybe do some CSR and work together with these groups that are already reaching out to this, what do you call this? There's this word that they use, marginalized communities, yes. The marginalized communities. Work with them, and possibly you don't even have to have them, but you're training the trainers to reach out and provide that solution. And hopefully, the more concerted effort that can be put into, bridging this digital gap, a digital divide between all these different communities, the better learning can be. So addressing digital divide will address knowledge, education, the divide in education, and so on and so forth.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. We have actually questions from the audience. I would like to start with the first question here. how to persuade the employer to approve the employee to join a training. Some do not believe in 1 or 2 days may change a person. Like David?
No, I think one of the challenges, we'll be talking very much about the online learning. I sort of smiled to myself when Eric was showing they've only got 80,000 different programs in Asia. That seems like rather a lot to me. So one of the challenges, I think, is how to define, how to encourage people to focus on what's valuable for them. And maybe one of the experience I've had with a client in the past is sort of still, even though people are learning online, build a learning community in the organization. So once a week or once every 2 weeks, everybody jumps on a call, or if you're in the office face-to-face, and just share the top 3 things you learned from your online training last week with everybody else. So we're still learning individually online, but we're creating this community. And obviously, any of us who need to share once a week, the 3 key points will potentially focus more on the training that we were doing. So still building that community around learning, I think, is key for that.
Yes, Eric?
Yeah, can I just contribute to the question earlier? So the question basically says, how do, it's gone already. Like basically the question was that how do you persuade an employer to want to invest in training? I actually want to ask back, how can you afford not to, right? If at all any information has transpired this morning, we've been trying to share that the world is changing, the workplace is changing, the workers are changing, their needs are changing, their expectations of the employer is changing, and the work itself is changing. New skills are required, and if you do not reskill, you do not upskill, you can't do the work anymore. So how can an organization be competitive, be global, if you do not? So rather than saying how do we persuade the employer to invest, more of a message to the employer out there today, and I hope there's a lot out there. I'm hoping that you hear what we are pleading to you to embrace the change, because this is required. You need to do this.
Yeah. I also have something to add. Possibly another step that you can take to persuade the employer is to quantify how will the training be more effective, and how do you quantify the training that is, if the employer says that, well, it's 1 or 2 days is not effective, try to quantify it. What is the basis for saying that it's effective versus not effective? So things that you can look into when you quantify would be the performance KPI, even employee satisfaction can be another indicator, and see how it is comparably when you send them to a 1-2 day training versus when you send them to a more lengthy training period. So those are the things that you can look into on top of what suggested.
All right. Actually, change takes time, takes lots of time and process. If clearly define what is the outcome that is desired, then that will be the first step that you can use to move forward. Because other than that, of course, 2 days of training is not going to change a lot in a person. It's just over a period of time. All right, thanks for that question. The first question there actually was briefly answered by Lorna just now. How do you help those that are finding difficulty using technology to learn? Example, rural folks or those that have short time attention span. All right, so we covered that earlier. Okay, this is my favorite that I've been dealing with the last 2 years. Wish to hear the evolution of training for mental health related, since the cases increase due to toxic work environment. Panelists first. About mental health, the evolution of training for mental health. Any idea?
I think there's two parts to that question. One is the latter part, which is the toxic working environment. So a key role is to train and develop out of that actually happening. But yes, in terms of mental health, I mean, it's a very challenging topic to, in inverted commas, train about. But part of it, I think, is about the recognition, and I think that has got better in terms of Malaysia and Sabah a little bit more. For many, many years, we never really talked about this in a corporate environment. So I think just the awareness of it, and by having some programs available, having platforms for people to be able to open up, to share, is already powerful in terms of facing this.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add, I think in my presentation earlier, I shared that this is one of the more popular courses that's requested online. If I were to deep dive into it, it's not about, there's quite a wide spectrum of the requests. The request was coming from, of course, the employees who are struggling with a new working environment, the new workplace technology. Your home is actually your office, that kind of thing, so you always feel burdened and all that. So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is also about how managers need to change their role instead of just managing, but it's also to care and to manage a situation like this of their employees, the well-being of their employees. So statistically anyway, these are the kind of courses that my platform has shown that is being very popular these days.
Okay, just like to share with you the last 2 years. The first year of COVID, I had a lot of discussion and with regards to mental health, and work with a few groups from KL. I mean, before COVID, everybody used to do 8, 9, 10 hours. But when COVID came and lockdown came, work from home, the working hours actually increased. So some of you working 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, 20 hours, and having your bosses calling you for a Zoom meeting at 10:30 at night, 11 at night, and then you have a family to take care, and everybody is in the house at the same time. So that has actually contributed a lot of mental stress. And you wouldn't believe the statistics that actually came out. Suicide rates actually went up in Malaysia, and the cases among men actually is about 70% compared to 30%. So how do you deal with that? So the evolution of training for mental health related actually it's been there, but it was never taken seriously because we only dealt stress as stress. But that stress is actually starts from your emotional level that actually affects your mental aspect. And for people losing job, actually that has become even more stressful, and that's where the suicide cases actually has gone crazy over the last 2 years in Malaysia as a whole. So it all goes back to what kind of self-awareness assessment actually that you do yourself. Because most of the time we do self-assessment in terms of career that we are successful, but actually there are more to it in that aspect. Due to toxic work environment is all because of how the leadership actually is in that organization that condone this kind of work environment, and that actually definitely as well contributes to mental health related cases. All right. Okay, next question. We know that IR4 is important in order to increase working efficiency. However, there are people who are not willing to change. Thus, how can we convince them? So who would like to answer this when it comes to those who don't like to change with regards to IR4?
Actually, I think it is something that you can't stop, right? I mean, what is changing from a technology standpoint is affecting you every day, whether you like it or not. So in that sense, affecting businesses, whether you like it or not. How did we get everybody into this conference room today? How can we get half the room if you don't have social media? So if an organization say, I don't want to accept social media, how will you continue to do business, right? So things like that. So you are actually faced with that. But I think my advice is to not look at IR 4.0 purely on a technology perspective. We should make it sound like an IT problem. It's really not an IT problem. It's actually more of a societal behavior kind of a change. And it's not a problem, by the way. It's just a change. And like what Lorna said, change has been happening for a long time. So the change that's happening right now is the way people are doing things are different. People go to work differently, right? People make decisions differently. And we need to understand that. And once we understand that, and if you're a business owner, for example, you will relate that to how does it mean to your business. Is it an opportunity to you, or is it a threat to you? obviously there's a lot of opportunities that you can take from this, because changing behavior of customers, for example, give you maybe a leveling of the playing field. All these changes doesn't mean that you're going to be a victim of it. Could also mean that you're going to be a change agent. So I think a lot of that depends on the way you see the IR 4.0. But to me personally, I look at this as an opportunity.
All right.
Same. Actually, I was also I wanted to mention about that as well. It's not really about resisting to the IR4 technology. It's also actually resisting to change in general. So it really addresses whether the company can be adaptable, can be resilient or not. And that is possibly, how do I say it? The resilience part is really controllable if it's on the lower management, but if it's on the top management especially, it's going to be very challenging. It really needs to be coming from top bottom in terms of change, accepting the change, going into something, especially something that the organization has never been into before. I'll share, if I can we still have time, short sharing on how the government itself has changed. I was involved in the government because I was a webmaster in Sabah Electronic Government, and between about 1998, we just established Sabah Electronic Government. Even the name itself was just established. We had a roadmap for Sabah, making it into an electronic government where things are done digitally. So possibly the people in Sabah did not feel it at that time, but the changes were happening internally. Between 1998 and the 2004, when I was still working for Sabah Electronic Government and SabahNet, they were trying to implement an e-leave system, electronic leave system, and everyone was resistant. Bureaucracy and the fact that a lot of the top management that has to use it was not IT literate enough. Even their assistants, the personal assistant, are all almost illiterate in IT. So what they actually did, because the top management at that time was the state secretary, Sabah State Secretary. Sabah State Secretary has the prerogative in enforcing changes in administration. So what they did was actually enforcing. You use e-leave, you use email or else. That's the only way. And everyone actually adapted to it. And everyone did not have any choice but to accept the change. And no one got hurt. And they actually did quantify the change from 2 days of leave approval up to 2 hours of leave approval. The processes were substantially lowered. But like I said, the change has to come from the top management. If the top management is the issue you need to tackle, prove them by monetary or numbers. That's usually how I would go.
Couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, thanks, Lorna, for the input. Right, next question. What is one piece of practical advice you would give to training providers who just started to embrace e-learning? Eric?
Can I have a try? Yeah. I'll just say two quick things. One is that because of technology, first thing a training provider can get is content. Now you have global content from all over the world at your fingertips, more than ever before. If these content are able to help you in delivering your teachings, make use of it. And it's available for you right now at a very, very really affordable cost and in a very seamless way that can be assimilated in your overall teaching and strategy. That's point number one. I think the second point is actually more of a 360 view. I'm not a trainer expert, my colleagues are, but as a learner myself, I know that to learn something is not just from, attending a course one day, but after that you also need to continue, right? To sharpen the skills, to reinforce, for example. And those are the kind of things that e-learning can help you as well. So it's, you go for a course one day, but after that, for the next month and the month after, I can reinforce my skills and all that. That can be done through an e-strategy, for example. So those kind of facilities are here now, today, and it's available for you. So maybe if you're interested, we can probably talk about this later.
All right, thanks, Eric, for that. Last question we have here. Training can improve employees' knowledge, update skills, but unfortunately, sometimes some employees' attitudes does not show any positives. So any solution on this?
I'll take the easy question. Okay, we can't force anybody to change their attitude, but in my opinion, what we can do is create the environment for them to want to change and to improve. And it's not from 0 to 100 in a day, it's an ongoing process to do that. And as trainers, also as employers, we should be supporting that journey for each one of our employees or our trainees to make that positive steps going forward. And in the end, as they change their attitude, they get more recognized, more accepted, more able to contribute to the wider learning community. I really strongly believe they'll want to continue on that journey. So up to us to provide that positive learning environment that helps them realize that actually a more positive attitude can be beneficial to themselves, but also to everybody else also.
Just can I add on, being in HR previously, in every organizations, you will have one or two individuals who are in this context. So don't dwell on them so much. Move on with a bigger group who are enablers in your organization. So we had a very interesting input session from all the three panelists. So what is future proofing actually? Did you get a better idea out of it? So from what the research I've done, future proofing is, as organization, as companies, what are your plans, not for now, but what are your plans for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of technology, in terms of digitalization? Of course, you want to have the best technology out there, but at the same time, how are you actually creating the environment in your organization? A lot of people tend to use TNA. That's just one tool is out there. How about actually creating skills map with regards to job scopes, job profiles, which is actually aligned to your business strategy? So that will actually help you in terms of seeing for the next first year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, what will be the skills that is actually required for you to future-proof the talent that you currently have. At the same time, helps you to retain, because retention is one of the challenges that employers are facing a lot out there. Besides even looking for skilled employees out there. So there's a shortage of talent. At the same time, there's a shortage of skilled talents out there as well. So how do you balance all this? So it's actually a bigger scope that we all actually have to look and work collaboratively with every stakeholders that is actually involved in bringing up or upskilling the entire workforce in this country. Okay? All right, so I would like to thank all the three panelists, and I'd like to thank all the audience for your contribution, your time, and your attention. And I would like to hand over this to Madam.
Thank you so much to the moderator for today, Mr. Munez, and also to our speakers, David, Eric, and Lorna. Please give them another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. By just sitting there, I think I've learned a lot already, and I hope you have also absorbed a few things there, very important, insights from them, and hopefully that you can actually use it to full good use immediately. And in today's fast-paced, technology-driven world, change is rapid and continuous. Organizations need to adapt in order to thrive. This means enabling ongoing learning and development for employees while embracing the latest trends and innovation for the success of the business. So with that, we have come to the end of our first session. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to thank you for your presence and participation. Please head over to Kinabatangan Hall 2 for lunch. And before that, do take your time to browse around the booths outside. For all those of you who might be employers, job seekers, or stakeholders, please do browse through, because we have a booth which is organized